Very simple. Okay? So let's get into the 4 different biological macromolecules. So we have carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And those are the 4 major molecules of life. Right? When we look inside living things and look at their organs and their tissues and their cells, these are the 4 things that make up all that stuff. Okay? So let's start real quick with the carbohydrates. Now I'm going to start by explaining what the shape of these molecules look like. And you don't have any pictures in your notes, so I'd really suggest that on the side you kind of do a rough drawing of what they might look like. It's probably important. Okay? So a carbohydrate is really known for, and let me get my pen again, for this almost hexagon or pentagon ring shape. Okay, so when you see this shape, you're going to know that what we're talking about is most likely a carbohydrate. Okay, and when I say building blocks, as you can see the first set of notes right here, think about it as a building block kind of like a Lego. All right, when you're making the Lego ship or the Lego castle, to build it you use the little tiny pieces of Lego. So the building blocks of the Lego castle are the individual Legos. So when we're looking at these macromolecules, we want to examine the individual units that make up the larger part. All right, and that's what the building block is. So we call the building block of carbohydrates a monosaccharide, and we all know that what the term mono means. Mono is one, so basically this means one saccharide or one sugar. All right, so examples of that would be glucose, fructose, galactose. All of that would have the shape of this single ring. All right, and the elements that are in a carbohydrate are only carbon, hydrogen, and that's not supposed to be nitrogen. Cross that out. Mistake, Mr. DePong, and that should be oxygen. A very crude oxygen. Wow. All right. I'm not going to kind of show you how they're set up in here because I think it's going too complicated, but just understand carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are the elements present in a carbohydrate. All right. Now, the function of the carbohydrate in living things is basically energy. All right, it's the main source of energy. It's going to be the first source of energy that living things will go to. Okay, so when you're in gym and you're running, the mile or whatever, you'll be using your carbohydrates first. Now, it's not the only source of energy you have, but it's the first main source of energy of living things. Okay, remember that we can actually store any extra carbohydrates, any unused ones, in the form of glycogen in animals and starch in plants. So if you think about a plant that would be a starch, like a potato is a starch. Well, all of that potato that we actually eat, that's just stored energy. That's extra energy the plant has made and stored it. Okay, and glycogen is actually stored in our liver for animals. Okay, now other forms of carbohydrates besides the monosaccharide would be a disaccharide, and obviously di means 2, so that would be 2 monosaccharides bonded together. So it would look like 2 rings. Okay, so an example of that would be sucrose, which is just table sugar. So you're eating a disaccharide when you pour sugar on your Frosted Flakes or whatever. Okay, any more than 2 monosaccharides, so 3 or more, we're just going to term that just a polysaccharide. So that prefix poly just means many, so many saccharides. And the 2 most common polysaccharides that you'll see are starch, which I talked about previously, and then something called cellulose, which is found in plants, mostly in the cell structures of the plants. Okay, in the cell walls of plants. And when we get into cells and the cell parts, you'll understand why cellulose plays a much bigger role. So I just want to kind of show you a picture of all the different kinds of carbohydrates. So you can see, where's my arrow? There, just pen is not working. There's your monosaccharide, one ring, and you can kind of see the elements actually put in here, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, just kind of all around. One ring, monosaccharide. Here we have a disaccharide. There's one ring. There's your second ring bonded together. All right, and this right here is just a molecule of starch, and you can see that it's more than two saccharides. It's a polysaccharide, and actually a real starch molecule would be more than just four. It would be a lot more, and so you can kind of see these little breaky marks here, just indicating that it goes on and on and on. All right, and then here are some of the examples of polysaccharides I gave you. There's starch again. Here's cellulose. There's a little bit different arrangement of the atoms in it. And then here's glycogen. This is that one energy storage that is used in animals. The makeup's a little bit different. Okay, so that's carbohydrates. Very, very general information, but you should know it all. Okay. Next thing is lipids. Now, lipids are also known as fats. Okay, but we're going to call them lipids because it's kind of more of a scientific term. All right. So the general shape, and let me get my horrible pen once again, see if it might work for me with my drawing. The general shape of a lipid is going to be something we call a glycerol backbone, and then you're going to have this chain of fatty acids, and they're going to kind of come off in this zigzaggy kind of shape. Ooh, this is a bad drawing. All right, so here's your glycerol. I'll just put a G there. And here is your fatty acid. I'll put Fa. Okay. This is a macromolecule that also contains carbon, hydrogen, and, oh man, oxygen. Well, you live and learn, I guess. So change this to oxygen. All right. So this is very similar to the elements in of like the carbohydrate, except the arrangement is much different. All right. Obviously not the ring shape. Lipids are an energy source, but they're kind of your secondary energy source. They're kind of more like your long-term energy storage. So basically, once your carbohydrates become depleted and you've used all of them, then you're going to go to your lipids. Okay. We also know lipids can be insulating. Somebody that an organism that has a little bit more of a layer of fat tends to be able to insulate and keep themselves warm in colder weather. Lipids also play a major part in membranes, in biological membranes. So when we look at something like the cell membrane and the makeup of the cell membrane, you'll recognize that the majority of your cell membrane is actually fat. Okay, natural steroids that are in the body, and there are natural steroids. They're not all like synthetic steroids. Natural steroids that you make in your body are synthesized from lipids. Okay, and then there are a couple examples here. We have saturated lipids. And we have unsaturated lipids, and you've probably seen that on the back of like food boxes on the ingredient label. Saturated lipids usually are solid at room temperature, so examples would be like butter or wax. That's a lipid, and then unsaturated tends to be liquid at room temperature, so oils are unsaturated. And if we went into it a little bit more, you'd recognize that the difference between unsaturated and saturated is just the makeup of the atoms and the arrangement that they're in. Okay, but you'll probably learn more about that in chemistry next year. So here's another picture of our lipid, and you can see this is, where's my pen? There we go. Ugh. There's your glycerol backbone, and then there's your three fatty acids that come off. Now remember, the general shape is three fatty acids, but sometimes you can have only two fatty acids. So it's not, set in stone that you always are going to have three fatty acids in a lipid. All right, and then here's just examples of lipids. There's your wax, there's your butter, there's your oil. Very simple. Okay. Third one is your proteins, okay? And a protein, just it's hard to draw a protein, so all I'm really going to do is, let me get my pen again, is draw like what it kind of has a general shape. And really what it is just a chain of these building blocks called amino acids, okay? So each one of these are amino acids, and basically you kind of connect them almost like a chain and almost bundle them up like it's kind of like a ball, and that's your protein, okay? So there are actually 20 different amino acid types that are present, so you have all these different combinations of these amino acids which make up the protein, okay? Protein contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but this time this one also contains nitrogen. So finally we got this right, all right? Proteins help with any type of cellular process. They form lots and lots of cellular structures, like your hair, your nail, your muscles are very heavy in protein. And then one big thing, and we're going to get into this later in this unit, is that all enzymes are considered proteins, okay? And enzymes are basically just something in your body that helps make your chemical reactions go real fast, all right? If you didn't have enzymes, you wouldn't be able to do certain things in your body. Certain chemical processes just would never happen because it would take much too long. So we have these enzymes that actually kind of help. It's almost kind of like a friend of the reaction, okay? So remember that proteins, or enzymes are proteins, okay? And so here's the actual shape of the amino acid. So it's kind of hard to draw, but you can see that all the elements there, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, and oxygen are present there. R, just don't worry about R, just kind of that's what's the difference between the 20 amino acids, but there's no R element in there at all, okay? And then below there you can see that's what a protein would look like, a bunch of amino acids connected together. And you can see there's lots of different types. We've got, the first one is glycine, and there's isoleucine, there's valine, there's cysteine, there's glutamine, there's glutamic acid, alanine, serine, leucine. I'm not going to go into all of them, but you can see there's a huge variety of amino acids, and the combinations that they're connected to each other in makes up specific proteins, okay? All right, so our final building block, or macromolecule, I'm sorry, is the nucleic acids, okay? And basically, the nucleic acids are your DNA and something called your RNA, all right? And we all kind of know what DNA does. It stores and it kind of transmits all your genetic information. You pass on your traits to your kid through your DNA, all right? You might not have heard of RNA, but RNA is very similar to DNA. And when we get into our DNA unit, you'll really kind of understand exactly how different DNA and RNA, but they both have the job of just storing and helping transmit or send off genetic information to your kids. Okay? Very, very simple. And so that ends this lecture. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Remember, write any questions down that you have that you didn't understand today. I know this is kind of a lot today.